Hello, and welcome to Oak Island Theories. In this video, we're going to explore the theory that the Elizabethan privateer Sir Francis Drake is the man behind the Oak Island mystery. Let's take a look.
In Season 5, Episode 7 of The Curse of Oak Island, researcher Paul Speed presented his theory that Oak Island's underground workings were constructed by 16th century Cornish miners on the orders of English privateer Sir Francis Drake. Cornish miners, he argued, were some of Europe's most competent excavators in the 15, 16, and 1700s, and were uniquely equipped to construct deep subterranean tunnels like the Smith's Cove Flood Tunnel, due to their experience in building undersea coal mines. Speed posited that Sir Francis Drake, who hailed from the city of Plymouth near the eastern border of Cornwall, hired Cornish miners to inter New World Spanish plunder on Oak Island sometime in the 1500s. Specifically, Speed believes that the treasure Drake decided to bury on Oak Island was silver he captured outside the town of Nombre de Dios, Panama, a major port utilized by the Spanish treasure fleet. When Rick Lagina asked Speed if there were any historic documents which indicate that Drake sailed to the North Atlantic, the researcher stated that many of Drake's records disappeared during his lifetime, having been confiscated by the English crown. There was something very serious going on here at that time for the English, he said, and if they wanted to keep the secret of Oak Island going for a while, they absolutely could. When further prompted by Rick, Speed suggested that Drake buried his treasure on Oak Island with the intention of returning to recover it in the future. He concluded his presentation by suggesting that the money pit contains Francis Drake's body, in addition to some of his treasure. The privateer's body, allegedly sealed in a lead coffin and cast into the sea somewhere in the Caribbean following the raiding expedition which claimed his life, has never been found. Speed further suggested that some of the metal objects encountered during Oak Island Tours Inc.'s various drilling operations in the money pit area might constitute Drake's coffin. Francis Drake was born in the early 1540s in the market town of Tavistock, West Devon, England, to a humble Protestant farmer. In the 1560s, the young farmhand secured a position in a small merchant fleet belonging to his cousin, John Hawkins, a sea captain and pioneer of the British slave trade. In the ensuing years, Drake, Hawkins, and the crew embarked upon a series of expeditions to the coast of West Africa, where they plundered Portuguese slave ships, loaded their own vessels with African slaves, and shipped their human cargo to the Caribbean. There, the English adventurers sold the slaves they captured to Spanish colonists in defiance of Spanish law. At that time, King Philip II of Spain forbade his subjects from trading with English merchants. These voyages constituted Drake's initiation into a lifetime of seafaring. In 1568, during another slave trading expedition, Drake and Hawkins, the former now a captain of his own ship, were beset by a hurricane off the coast of Cuba. The Englishmen and their crew survived the storm, but were forced to repair their damaged ships and take on fresh water at San Juan de Ulua, an island in the Gulf of Mexico, adjacent to the port town of Veracruz. Although Spanish colonists who manned the fortress at Veracruz initially allowed the Englishmen to repair their ships in peace, Drake and Hawkins and their crews soon found themselves surrounded by Spanish warships, one of them carrying Don Martin Enriquez de la Manza, the Viceroy of New Spain. In spite of the fact that England and Spain were not officially at war at the time, the Spanish launched a surprise attack on the Englishmen as punishment for their illicit activities. During the 8-hour battle that ensued, the English lost 5 ships and 500 men, while the Spanish lost only 2 ships and 20 men. Drake and Hawkins barely escaped with their lives. The incident at San Juan de Ulua imbued Drake with a fierce hatred of the Spanish, and in 1572 he sailed across the Atlantic to Panama, determined to seize Spanish treasure. At that time, the Spanish shipped silver from their Peruvian mines up the Pacific coast to Panama City, where they loaded it into mule carts and packed it overland, through the Panamanian jungle, to the port town of Nombre de Dios on the Atlantic coast. There, the Spanish loaded their silver into galleons and shipped them across the ocean to Spain by way of Havana. Drake and his crew arrived at Nombre de Dios in July and managed to raid the warehouses where the silver was stored. During the ensuing skirmish with the town's defenders, Drake suffered a gunshot wound to the leg and was forced by his crew to retreat empty-handed. Since England and Spain were not officially at war at the time, Drake knew that he and his crew would have to acquire treasure before they made the journey home. Queen Elizabeth I, the implacable Virgin Queen of England, would almost certainly punish them for their politically compromising raids unless they compensated her handsomely. Accordingly, he and his crew hid out in the Panamanian jungle for nearly a year, during which time they allied themselves with jungle-dwelling Cimarrons, African slaves who had escaped their Spanish masters, and a crew of French privateers. On one occasion, a Cimarron bushman urged Drake to climb a tall tree in the middle of the rainforest. From its canopy, the pirate could see not only the Atlantic, but also the legendary Pacific Ocean, which no Englishman had ever set eyes on before. In the spring of 1563, Drake and his crew, along with their French and Cimarron allies, ambushed the annual Spanish silver train in the jungle, about 1 mile from Nombre de Dios. The Spanish guards and their slaves were completely unprepared for the assault and fled into the jungle, abandoning the treasure they were tasked with transporting. The pirates, upon appraising their plunder, were ecstatic to learn that they had captured a whopping 30 tons of silver and gold. Unable to carry all their plunder with them, Drake and his crew are said to have buried much of their booty on the beach before setting sail for England with around 150 pesos worth of treasure. Upon his return, Drake was praised in England as a daring privateer and condemned in Spain as an unscrupulous pirate. In 1576, Queen Elizabeth I of England called upon the privateer, who had spent the past decade enjoying his hard-earned wealth, and tasked him with a top-secret mission. The Queen commanded Drake to lead an expedition against Spain's New World colony on the Pacific coast of the Americas, swearing him to keep his orders secret on pain of death. In December 1577, Drake embarked upon this expedition with 5 ships and 164 men, initially telling his crew that they were headed for the city of Alexandria, Egypt on a trading voyage. At the Straits of Gibraltar, Drake suddenly ordered his oblivious crew to head southwest down the west coast of Africa, and finally across the Atlantic to the east coast of South America. Drake lost much of his crew to disease while crossing the Atlantic and was forced to abandon 2 of his ships along the way. By the time he reached San Julian, a natural port on the southeastern coast of what would one day become Argentina, many of his crew members, including a handful of aristocratic officers, were beginning to question his leadership. On the beaches of San Julian, Drake and his crew came upon a number of sun-bleached human skeletons impaled on spikes, the grisly remains of mutineers who were hanged, drawn, and quartered 58 years prior on the orders of Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer who, along with his successor, Juan Sebastian Elcano, led the first successful circumnavigation of the globe. Magellan himself was killed by Filipino warriors during the Battle of Mactan before the voyage was completed. Perhaps following Magellan's lead, Drake decided to make an example of his friend Thomas Doughty, who was foremost among the gentlemen who were beginning to contest his authority. In the summer of 1578, Drake accused Doughty of witchcraft, mutiny, and treason. In a kangaroo court over which Drake presided as prosecutor and judge, Doughty was convicted of mutiny alone and sentenced to death. Following the verdict, Drake and Doughty took Holy Communion and dined together in the captain's cabin. Francis Fletcher, the clergyman who administered the communion, described this strange event in a later reminiscence. Quote, "After this holy repast, they dined also at the same table together, as cheerfully in sobriety as ever in their lives they had done aforetime, each cheering up the other, and taking their leave, by drinking each to other, as if some journey only had been in hand." Unquote. On July 2nd, 1578, Thomas Doughty was beheaded, his last words being an exhortation to the executioner to swing his axe without reservation, so as to sever his neck with one stroke. Shortly thereafter, Drake changed the name of his flagship from the Pelican to the Golden Hind, perhaps in an effort to smooth over the incident. That fall, Drake and his crew set sail for the Straits of Magellan, a narrow waterway separating the southern tip of mainland South America from the island of Tierra del Fuego. They successfully navigated the passage, engaging in a minor skirmish with native warriors en route. Upon entering the Pacific Ocean, they were beset by violent storms which pushed them southwards. Drake lost 2 of his 3 remaining ships to these tempests. One sank, taking its captain and crew with it to the bottom of the sea, while the other was forced to return to England. When the sea finally settled, Drake and the crew of the Golden Hind sailed alone up the coast of Chile and Peru, raiding a number of Spanish ships and towns along the way and accumulating a wealth of treasure in the process. Their greatest prize was an enormous Spanish galleon called Nuestra Señora de la Concepcion, more commonly known by its less reverent nickname, the Cacafuego. From this vessel, they appropriated 28 tons of silver ingots, 80 pounds of gold, 13 chests of plate, plate being an antiquated term for silver coins, a golden crucifix encrusted with emeralds, and a quantity of jewels, valued at 360,000 pesos in total. Drake and his crew were wildly successful in their raids, often capturing ships and towns with little bloodshed on account of Drake's wily tactics and the fact that the Spanish were not expecting to encounter English pirates in the Pacific. Every time Drake and his crews raided a Spanish ship or port, colonial authorities reported the incident to King Philip II of Spain, and every time the Spanish king complained of Drake and his band of marauders to Queen Elizabeth I of England, the Queen officially condemned the pirates' actions, although she likely reveled in them in secret. Drake and his sailors continued northwards, hoping to intercept a Spanish treasure galleon inbound from Manila. When the galleon failed to appear, they sailed further north in search of the fabled Northwest Passage, a legendary sea route through North America, which was said to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Some believe that Drake and his crew traveled as far north as Vancouver Island before turning around. When they had reached a point off the coast of what is now Northern California, or perhaps Southern Oregon, they disembarked on the mainland, mingled with friendly natives, and claimed the land, which they named Nova Albion, archaic Latin for New Britain, for the Queen of England. The crew of the Golden Hind left Nova Albion and voyaged across the Pacific to the Maluku Islands, also known as the Spice Islands, due to their global monopoly on the production of nutmeg and cloves in the Indonesian archipelago. There, Drake befriended the local sultan, the Maluku Islands having been governed by minor sultanates since the arrival of Arab merchants in the 14th century and the subsequent conversion of the locals to Islam, who had just had a falling out with Portuguese traders, and secured for England a monopoly on trade in the area, thereby paving the way for the British East India Company. That accomplished, the crew sailed through the waters of Southeast Asia and across the Indian Ocean to the Cape of Good Hope on the southern tip of Africa. From there, they traveled northwest, stopping briefly in Sierra Leone before finally returning to England in 1580, successfully completing the second ever circumnavigation of the globe. Queen Elizabeth, in accordance with her and Drake's arrangement, received half of the treasure held in the hold of the Golden Hind, while Drake, his crew, and the Voyage's investors shared the rest. Much to their delight, the Queen and other financiers learned that they had received a 4,700% return on their initial investments. Curiously, upon Drake's return, Queen Elizabeth declared that all written accounts of his voyage were to be secrets of the crown, and had the nautical charts that Drake and his cartographers had produced during their circumnavigation, as well as the logbook of the Golden Hind, locked away in the Tower of London. She also forbade Drake and his sailors from publishing any memoirs relating details of the voyage on pain of death. Today, the whereabouts of most contemporary documents related to Drake's circumnavigation of the globe remain a mystery. The following year, Queen Elizabeth dubbed Drake a knight aboard the Golden Hind. With his new wealth and status, Sir Francis Drake spent the first half of the 1580s dabbling in English politics and public service. In 1585, Spain finally declared war on England in response to Queen Elizabeth's alliance with Protestant Dutch rebels. At that time, the area comprising what is now Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg constituted 17 provinces of the Spanish Empire, known collectively as the Spanish Netherlands. Since 1568, Dutch nobles of Lutheran, Calvinist, and Anabaptist persuasion, resentful of Spanish taxes and the Roman Catholic status quo, had led a revolt against Spanish rule in what is known today as the 80 Years' War, or the Dutch War of Independence. In the summer of 1585, Queen Elizabeth I of England agreed to dispatch 6,400 foot soldiers and 1,000 cavalrymen to the city of Antwerp in modern-day Belgium to help Dutch defenders lift a Spanish siege. For this reason, King Philip II declared war on England. As soon as this Anglo-Spanish War was declared, Queen Elizabeth commanded Sir Francis Drake to preemptively strike the Spanish in their New World colonies. In September 1585, Drake led a 21-ship, 1,800-soldier expedition to the Caribbean, attacking several Old World Spanish and Portuguese towns along the way. When he finally reached the Spanish West Indies, as the Caribbean was known at the time, he captured the town of Santo Domingo on the island of Hispaniola and ransomed it back to the governor. He repeated a similar performance at Cartagena de Indias, a Spanish colonial town located on the northern coast of what is now Colombia. Following the second success, Draque and his men sailed to the Spanish colony of Florida, where they sacked the town of San Augustine. That accomplished, they sailed to Virginia, where English gentleman Sir Walter Raleigh had established an experimental English colony. There, Draque and his men picked up a number of disgruntled colonists and sailed back to England, their ships laden with Spanish treasure. Although it is not necessarily relevant to Drake's biography, it is interesting to note that, sometime during the ensuing Anglo-Spanish War, the inhabitants of the Roanoke colony mysteriously disappeared, earning Roanoke the nickname the Lost Colony. Drake's devastating raids earned him a ferocious reputation among the Spanish. Colonists throughout New Spain began to refer to him as El Draque, the Dragon. In the aftermath of Drake's 1585/86 expedition, and in response to the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, the Catholic monarch of Scotland, who was beheaded on the orders of Protestant Queen Elizabeth, her cousin, King Philip II of Spain planned a full-scale invasion of England. Upon learning of the planned invasion, the English Queen ordered Draque to carry out another preemptive strike on Spain, specifically on the port city of Cadiz on Spain's southwestern coast, where the great Spanish Armada was anchored. The Spanish Armada was an enormous fleet consisting of 130 warships, 8,000 sailors, 18,000 soldiers, 1,500 brass cannons, and 1,000 iron cannons, and constituted the mightiest navy in Europe at the time. Drake's subsequent raid on Cadiz, which resulted in the destruction of much of the Spanish fleet, was derisively named Singeing the King of Spain's Beard. In the aftermath of the raid, Draque captured the São Felipe, the Portuguese-Spanish treasure galleon fresh from the Caribbean, laden with a year's worth of gold, silver, and spices. Following the raid on Cadiz, Sir Francis Draque was promoted to Vice Admiral of the English fleet. Legend has it that in 1588, when the Spanish Armada finally set sail for England, Draque was playing a game of bowls, or lawn bowling. When he received the news that the Spanish were approaching, he was unperturbed, remarking that there was plenty of time to both finish the game and still beat the Spanish. In any case, Draque led his ships, which were much smaller and more maneuverable, although far less numerous, than their magnificent Spanish counterparts around the Spanish fleet. There, situated at a point off the coast of Calais, France, he sent a number of fire ships, which were abandoned ships filled with explosives and set on fire, after the Spanish and chased them down the English Channel. After engaging the English in a long-distance cannon battle in the waters off Gravelines, a port city in the Spanish Netherlands, Draque being careful to stay out of range of Spanish grappling hooks, as the Spanish were believed to have an advantage over the English in close-quarters combat, the panicked Spanish retreated for home, their great armada in tatters. Drake's victory over the Spanish Armada effectively ended Spain's naval supremacy in the Atlantic. The following year, Draque and English soldier Sir John Norreys were tasked with destroying the remainder of the Spanish fleet and aiding Spanish-averse rebels in taking Lisbon, Portugal. They failed to complete either objective. 6 years later, Draque led an expedition to South America, where he suffered a number of defeats at the hands of the Spanish. Several weeks after the Battle of San Juan, his final defeat, Sir Francis Draque succumbed to dysentery and was buried at sea in a lead casket. To date, his coffin has never been rediscovered. As mentioned earlier, researcher Paul Speed put forth the theory that Drake's surviving crew brought the pirate captain's body to Oak Island and buried it, along with silver which Draque captured during his first raid on the town of Nombre de Dios on Oak Island. What do you think of this Francis Draque theory of Oak Island? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support this channel, please check out the Oak Island Encyclopedia by clicking the link in the description.